This week on the podcast, what could a Burnham Britain look like for your business? Stay tuned as we thrash it out. Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6- and 7-figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Claire Hancock, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. So last week, Claire, I feel like I posed somebody of your, shall I say, financial stature, a question that was far too easy.
What did you ask?
So I asked you about would you take £1 million now or would you take £1,000 a week for the rest of your life? So I've tried to make this a bit more nuanced because I realised that was just for you. This was it was beginner level, wasn't it?
Oh my God, what have you gone and done?
So new question for you this week, right? This is slightly more challenging, but this is the proposal that I've got for you. Would you rather have £3,000 a week for the next 25 years or £1,500 a week for life, but the £1,500 rises with inflation every year? You can speak your workings as well, because this is a podcast, so you're welcome to.
25 years. I'm trying to think about like how long I think I'm going to live, which is quite a deep question. Then I think starting to think I'm snowballing as to my life choices, and am I going to live as long as I want to live? And it's got a bit out of control. But my gut is telling me that the lower value, so what was it, 1,100 for somebody of my age with potentially 60 years left of life, that lower amount with inflation would be better in the long run.
I mean, annoyingly, you're right.
Yeah.
That is probably for you the better option. Actually,
there must be like an age, like how long you've got to live for it. It's
kind of suggested that you would probably go for option A because nominally the amount's bigger. It's like £3.9 million would be the 3,000 over 25 years a week. But the 3,000 would only be worth 1,600 in today's money at inflation after that 25 years. However, the 1,500 that raised by inflation, by year 25, the weekly payment has grown to around £2,700. So if Claire lives to, say, 85, which you'll probably easily do, probably more based on your family, and records from age 50, that's 35 years of payment, with the later ones being very large in nominal terms. So they said that based on that, the total nominal payout could comfortably exceed £5 to £6 million.
Yeah.
Versus the 3.9.
However, it's actually a difficult one because the short-term amount of cash that I could receive could be significant. Like to accumulate, what would that be, like 12, 13, what was it, 3,300 a week or something?
£3,000 a week?
So to accumulate like £12,000 a month, you know, within a year, if you saved all of that money, you'd have something that you could invest and therefore generate more money. So that's actually a really difficult one to decide on. Yeah.
Actually, you've answered it totally the opposite way you did last time, because last time it was like, no, I'd take that money because I really know what to do with that money. And actually, you're absolutely right. Actually, you are better off taking £3,000 a week and then every week invest in that. Or even if you put that £3,000 a week every week directly into the stock market and bought into it. I mean, if I ran those numbers, I guess it would absolutely walk over option B all day long. So actually, you really need to think about this in so many different ways as to whether you're just going to take a really easy route, which is just take the cash, or whether you're going to think really, really cleverly about how you grow your money. Anyway, I thought I'd pushed you there a little bit. Technically speaking, on paper, option B is the right answer, but actually the real, if you would like like S-level smart.
S-level?
Yeah. Have you not seen on social media, or the new thing is to rate everything S, A, B, C, D, E?
No.
Honestly, this is trending everywhere.
On social media?
On LinkedIn, on TikTok, on whatever else. Basically, they talk to business people or whoever, and you basically rate these things. Even on the property podcast recently, they were rating like the areas to invest around, and they would rate them. It's either S, A. I can't remember what the S stands for, but S is above A. It's like the top tier. But this is the thing right now about how you rank things. You don't rank them A to D or 1 to 5. You rank them S to E or whatever. Look it up, honestly.
So we've created a new alphabet.
Blow your mind.
But
that's the thing.
You've just referred to me as top tier.
Anyway, well, you would have been
So
top
nice
tier
of
if you'd
you.
gone into the investment thesis.
Well, I did.
All the rest of it. Anyway, shall we move on to this week's news story of the week? So this week's news story of the week, it would be remiss of us not to talk about, there's something's happened with the Prime Minister. But anyway, putting that aside, the actual news story of the week was absolutely fascinating, far more interesting than a changed Prime Minister. And that was, at Ordnance Survey, we chart places where Google Maps won't go. This blew my mind. Now, this was a story, it was actually an interview with the kind of CEO of Ordnance Survey. Now, we would all probably know Ordnance Survey as probably as simply as the maps we use to ramble,
Hikers, yep.
hike and various other things. But this is a staggeringly interesting company. And I think the key point here is that the average person has no idea how many times they interact with Ordnance Survey per day. But basically, the average person uses Ordnance Survey 42 times per day. Why is that, Claire? Because I know you've researched this.
Because of how many companies use them.
Because of how many companies use them. Actually, do you know what? It's not even that many companies, because this is a massive business. There's a few things that are fascinating about this business. First of all, did you know that Ordnance Survey was a government-owned business?
100% owned by the government.
100% owned by the government.
For national security reasons.
Okay. And let me just wind up a little bit, because my first kind of introduction to Ordnance Survey as a thing that blew my mind a little bit was when we moved house recently.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't it wasn't
3 years ago.
Yeah, 3 years ago. So
as the neighbours told me this morning.
Okay, did they?
3 years today.
We effectively split a house into two. So we actually did a title split on it, where we split the land and built another house and various other things. So we effectively created a different title deed. And after about 3 or 4 months of living in the house, we had a knock on the door. You were out. You weren't in. And this guy turned up at the door with this long pole thing, and he went, "Hi, I'm here from Ordnance Survey. I'm just here to map out your land. Is that okay?" I just thought, well, does it cost me anything? He's like, no, it's just something we do. And whenever there's change in land, we've got to keep them totally up to date. So we map them out, and I'll just need access to your garden to do that. Go on.
I've got a dead interesting fact.
Yeah.
Can I just interject and just tell you a little bit of history? So Ordnance Survey maps is essentially like the map of the ground of the UK.
Yes.
But there's also so much more to it. So I was doing a lot of research on this as to what the difference between Google Maps and Ordnance Survey is, and do we need both? Is there a place for both, etc., etc. And basically they described it if you sent an ambulance to a location using Google Maps, then it would turn up at a field and not know any more than it's a field.
Yeah.
But if you use Ordnance Survey data, you would know where the gateposts were, you would know where all of the hedges were, you would know the height of the ground, you would know so much more. And so then I started to think, okay, how do we collect this data? How do we maintain this data? And Ordnance Survey started in 1791 in the French Revolution because they were concerned about an invasion and they wanted to protect the English coastline. So they started by mapping church spires and mountain peaks and measuring in between them. Okay. That was how it began. Then in the 1930s, there was this massive project called retriangulation, and they built concrete pillars on hilltops and important landmarks. And again, we mapped everything, exact distances, exact angles. And today, Ordnance Survey have their own fleet of aeroplanes that go out every single day mapping the ground. And anywhere where the aeroplanes can't see, they fly really low and they've got really high-tech cameras on them. Anywhere where aeroplanes cannot see, they've got 230 employees that go on foot where trees and other things are covering the ground. And we live in a very tree area, which is exactly why we had a guy knock on our door and they couldn't do it from an aeroplane.
It's insane because it says that they have 600 million features that are updated 30,000 times a day.
Yeah.
Using these different
aeroplanes.
Technology or various other things that they do.
So they don't use GPS because GPS is not accurate enough. They built their own sort of GPS style software called OSNet, and it's within 1 to 2 centimeters accurate. So when somebody or an aeroplane or something is mapping where a feature like a church or like a gatepost or something like that is, it's within 1 to 2 centimeters. And when you think about how Google, so the biggest competitor in the UK from a commercial perspective is Google, they map everything with satellites and Street View cars and Android. That's now their biggest source of data collection. So you can immediately see actually the value that Ordnance Survey bring to so much stuff that underpins UK infrastructure, like planning, like emergency services, like defence, like all of these types of things, and why OS is so critical to it all.
It's literally absolutely insane.
It is.
So the guy came around, didn't he, with his stick, and he just walked to the garden and just plotted everything like really manually
with his special app turned on with OSNet.
Yeah.
So it was within 1 to 2 centimetres of accuracy.
So I wonder if
and then that information feeds into land registry, so they know where.
So what happens if I refuse to let him do that?
Borders. Like we're in a country like the Vatican.
What happens if I refuse to let him do that on my land? I wonder where that stands.
Yeah, I wonder where that stands too.
Because
why would you?
Well, I guess there is that why would you, but yeah, it is interesting. I mean, the thing that blows my mind with this, probably more so than all these little things, is this is a government-owned business, but it has a phenomenal profit margin. So it turns over £195 million a year with an underlying profit of 41.8 million. What's that? That's like a 22% margin. That like walks all over any business of that size in the private sector.
Yeah.
Which is just unheard of for a government-owned business. I mean, it's just absolutely insane.
Hang on a minute, though. Everything is not as it seems. Do you want to know where their revenue comes from?
Well, only 100 customers they've got.
They've got more customers than that. So they turn over, let's call it 200 million, because that's easy to work with numbers. 200 million in 2025. 10% of that, 5% of that, so £10 million comes from paper maps.
Right.
Which is interesting. There's still quite a booming map market.
Yeah.
100 million comes from the government.
Okay, so that's funding.
Previously, Ordnance Survey existed, and the likes of the NHS, local councils, the planning departments, they would all have their own individual contracts with Ordnance Survey. But instead, the government reached this agreement where they just pay this lump sum of 100 million every year, and that covers free use to all government organisations.
All government agencies, yeah. I assume this is like massively important in military and national security. That must be a huge part.
Yeah. So what this tells you is actually this business turns over 100 million, really. Yeah. And you just think when they've got such amazing data that can be used by so many different organisations, especially in this world of logistics, if we think about like food deliveries and things like that, how important location is to not having delays for your drivers, not going to the wrong places, not having issues with access, all of those types of things, which would make businesses more profitable. Why is this only turning over 100 million from commercial activity?
I mean, the data and more importantly, the quality of their data, because of how deep the data is off the charts. And if that was in America, it'd be worth billions, wouldn't it, the company?
Do you want to know what the problem is?
Go on.
It's the same problem that we have seen for decades in the UK with the government and the rules that they set themselves, because they are stuck in this trap that it's in their charter that they legally must stay profitable. So they have their hands tied in terms of what they can invest in for the long term. So they, if this was a private organisation, they would absolutely be investing millions and millions, making a loss for maybe the next 5 years in order to project themselves forward on the long term. And they don't have that option. And we've seen, Rachel Reeves, when she came into power, when she became Chancellor, she spoke about this, how actually we need to release some of our fiscal rules to enable us to invest for the long term. That was always her argument. And I think it's a similar thing that they're falling into this trap.
I also wonder whether they just simply aren't charging enough for their services. I don't know what it costs, but they have a hell of a monopoly, don't they? And any other private organisation would generally take full advantage of that monopolistic position. So
one of the issues I was reading about is that they don't really have this like open API feature that the likes of Google Maps have.
Okay.
So if you're a software developer or somebody like that, it's really easy to plug into Google Maps data and use that instead. But they've suggested that 100 billion of additional economic boost over the next 10 years could be unlocked if Ordnance Survey could figure out how to make their API easily linkable. 100 billion.
Crazy.
Just sitting there in government assets unutilized.
Absolutely insane. Well, that is just, it's way more interesting than change Prime Minister, isn't it? That is just staggering data and story. I just didn't know anything about it. It's just, they're like the silent, interesting company in the background, aren't they?
It is absolutely fascinating because
what you just don't know goes on.
I like a bit of hiking, don't I? And I like to, there's a website. It's actually a website. It's not even an app. Called,
the one with the little red.
My Footpath.
Yeah.
And
they must plug into it.
Yeah, they must plug into this because it's like footpath, bridleway data, everything like that. So you can literally just like follow the red line and go for a walk and see where you end up. But yeah, I wonder if that is part of, if when I'm using that, it's actually a government app, maybe.
Very possibly.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Well, let's move on to this week's deep dive and see what we're talking about this week. So I have shirked it in the news story, but we're not completely shirking the speculation here. We are going to go full speculation here. Just to put complete disclaimer out here. We're going to be talking about complete pie in the sky stuff, what's going out there, picking up on nuances about what's been said. But
look, I think
we want to ask is, what would an Andy Burnham Britain potentially look like, and especially for business owners, and what's been said so far, what's been definitely ruled out, what could be on the cards, and those type of things. We're going to run through some quick things that have been heavy in the news. Nothing's bolted on. It's not even bolted on that he's necessarily going to be the Prime Minister yet, although it feels very, very likely.
Let's put a caveat on this before we go any further. So our listeners are listening to this probably on a Thursday when it's released. So it's Thursday, the 1st of July. And what are we? Saturday. We're Saturday, the 28th, 27th of June.
Like everything could change by then.
Literally anything could change. So just bear that in mind when you're listening to this. Keir Starmer literally resigned this week, but there's no clear path as to what's going to happen. It appears that Andy Burnham will be Prime Minister because it's been mooted that Wes Streeting has stepped down.
It's only 4 days away, Claire, calm it.
It's insane though.
Nothing's going to change in the next 4 days. They're not doing it until July.
Reminding people where we're at. It looks like it's going to be Andy Burnham, but it's not guaranteed. There could be some sort of contest.
Anyway, so I'm going to go through the things that seem to be quite high on the agenda and mooted quite aggressively. They're in no particular order about how bolted on they are, apart from the one I'm going to talk about at the end. But the first one is he has, and this is probably this hasn't been heavily, but it's been loosely bolted on, that he's mentioned that he'd like to reverse the national insurance increase on employees, hasn't he? He said he wasn't a fan of that. He believes it's done more damage than good.
Yeah.
And he's been sort of taken on record in a number of places. Newsnight was one of them, wasn't it? Where he's said that one of the things he'd like to do is reverse that.
Yes. However, the first principle I would say that he seems to be living by, because a lot of criticism has been levelled at him about how the markets will react to him. And so he's been repeatedly saying that he won't increase income tax, VAT and national insurance.
Well, he can't anyway, because that's their manifesto.
Yeah.
So it's not his choice,
and
is it?
that he will maintain Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules. And so even when he's saying things like, I would like to reverse the national insurance increase on employers, so he's talking about dropping it back to 13.8%.
How would he do that and maintain the rules?
It's also been mooted that may happen only for British national employees.
Yeah.
But again, that would hit some of the hardest industries, like the care industry, for example. That would bring, and hospitality, farming, all of these things that would bring no benefit to those industries that are arguably the worst hit by the national insurance increase. So whether he's going to be able to push it through or not, I just don't know.
No, I agree.
And we're at the point where, okay, a lot of businesses are struggling right now, but 1.2% off your national insurance bill, is it going to make a significant enough difference?
But then you get into that. The problem is, I don't know. You get into that argument. It's like where does it end?
Yeah. No, I agree.
Of course, it's going to make a difference. Well, look, it's made a massive difference to how high unemployment's gone and how bad youth employment's been. So why wouldn't it make a benefit in the right direction when you take it back out again?
But 1.2%.
Yeah.
Is not the issue that businesses are facing at the moment. The issue that businesses are facing is the overall cost of employment. So it's national minimum wage and national employees' contributions.
There's obviously a culmination of things. It's never any one thing.
But fundamentally, it's the state of the economy.
Quick question. Do you trust the numbers your accountant sends you? Or in fact, are they even sending you what you need at all? If your business turns over £1 million or more, you're already in the top 10% of UK companies. But here's the problem. Most accountants are built for the other 90%. They're built for compliance, not for businesses making big decisions on tight margins. So if you've stopped trusting your numbers enough to make confident decisions, head over to profitcashgrowth.com and book a discovery call. Let's get your business back in the room with people who actually understand it. Economies. But
I would forgo that 1.2%.
There's no issue with the economy. We're the fastest growing in the G7. There's no issue.
Oh, shut up.
We're way ahead of it. We're way ahead of it.
We're way ahead of everybody that's
except
asleep.
the US.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was looking at the German economy; it's completely knackered.
Simon,
like,
I could go and take part in an OAP's marathon and be the fastest one there, but it doesn't make me a good marathon runner.
But you can only compare yourself against the best in the world, which we're doing. What else do you do? Well, I'm not saying nobody's growth is good. Nobody's growth is good, but
people
ours
need
is
to
not
tune
bad.
in to next week's podcast because we are going to be doing a deep dive on that, aren't we?
Yeah.
There are a few outliers,
but the point is like we're not in recession. So
yeah, but it's still shocking. It's shocking. As a business owner,
feel great.
I would happily forgo my 1.2% cut on my employer's national insurance. I would happily put that into some sort of economic growth bucket if I had any faith that the government could deploy that in a way that grew the country.
There's something not quite right though, isn't there? Because like I didn't really want to turn this into a political podcast because it's not what we do, but there is actually, on the face of it, there is an argument to say the actual GDP numbers aren't bad, but I do agree with you that every business owner feels like it's bad. So what's the disconnect? Why
the GDP numbers are bad?
No, they're up 1.2. We're growing as an economy every year. So we're not going backwards, but business owners are feeling like they're constantly going backwards. So where's the disconnect? Do you see my point? Our economy's gone forward every year. Last year it went up 1.3% across the year. This year it's pitted to go up 1.2. We are moving forward every year by a percent. It'd be nice to have 3%. It'd be nice to be the US, all the rest of it. But we are moving forward. We are not a country moving backwards. But I'm not taking away from the fact that I don't come across a business owner that doesn't feel like their business is going backwards. So where's the disconnect? How can a country be going forward, but everyone that runs a business feel like they're going backwards? Doesn't make sense, does it? I think there's numbers being played with or something's going on here.
Agreed.
I don't. It's so macro you couldn't say, but it doesn't feel like it makes sense. So anyway, so that's national insurance. The next one is
20% business rate cut to small hospitality and retail units.
Yeah.
So this is quite interesting. They're saying that basically if you're a small business in hospitality, retail and leisure, you would get a 20% cut on your business rates. And it would be funded by a levy on what they call super warehouses. Now, what is deemed as a super warehouse, I don't know, but I'm hoping that it simply refers to like the likes of Amazon and people like that have got these mega warehouses.
This is a good policy, isn't it?
They could potentially come out with something like, I don't know, any warehouse over 10,000 square foot or something, which is actually not that big.
Yeah, we had this conversation about my, my strong belief in the fact that we shouldn't have companies as big as we've got, and companies have got ridiculous. Companies shouldn't be bigger than entire nations. And actually, any policy that massively penalises them and takes money from them in a big way to support lots and lots and lots of small businesses is a good policy. But you could argue the same in personal reasons. Tax the rich, like give to the poor. It's the same thing. But I think in business we haven't had the what do they call it? Regressive policy in the same way we have personally. I think in business we've allowed the rich to be ridiculously big, the Amazons or whatever else.
Yeah.
And absolutely.
But it's such a fine line, isn't it? Because look, I'm not saying that I sit on the side of it, but I think you've got to play devil's advocate in these situations, haven't you? And say the likes of Amazon maybe Amazon's not a good example because it's a B2C consumer, but this is going to affect the likes of car manufacturers, for example, and food manufacturers that do not need to put their warehouses and their manufacturing plants in the UK. They have the means to choose any location in the world.
Sure.
And the risk is that this is just another reason for big companies and things that really make a significant tangible difference to the UK economy to go. And we've seen that, we live near Luton and there's a lot of car manufacturing in Luton. And we've seen that that's happening with the car industry. They just simply don't want to be in the UK anymore.
What's the stat though that what percentage of businesses are small businesses? Something like 80%, 90%, isn't it? I think 90% of all businesses
less
small
than a
businesses.
million.
Yeah. So
less than a million turnover.
Yeah. So the reality is that you say they can make a tangible difference, but they only represent 10%, whereas the other 90% could be an army of people growing this economy.
Yeah, potentially.
Incentivised right. They could be an absolute
totally
army of people growing this economy right if you move from that 10% into the 90%.
But there is this I don't know how to refer to it. Liz Truss was very famous for talking about trickle-down economics, wasn't she? And this concept of like, if you let the people at the top have the most money, eventually it filters through. And we see that with what's happening here, because we have customers that, for example, have got huge contracts through data center work, and we've got other customers that, you know, they run like a significant 7-figure business, like turning over like £8 million, selling product to Amazon, not on Amazon, to Amazon.
Yeah, it's all interlinked. I get it.
So, you know, the success of these bigger companies does drive the success of the smaller companies also, and there's arguments like either way, but ultimately I don't think that we can I think it's a little bit like saying tax the rich and relieve taxes on poorer people. It's like, okay, but there's a balance, there's a yin and yang with everything, and where is that line? And I think it's a bit similar with this 20% business rate cut for small businesses, but we'll just whack the tax on the bigger businesses. I think we need to be aiming for lower taxes and a self-sustaining country, and enabling people to be self-sustaining and businesses to be self-sustaining, and it not just be done through taxation.
But if you cut from one place, you've got to put it. Like, what's the other alternative?
You don't have to. You cut the overall tax burden.
How?
Well, that's the whole concept of, like, you know, being a conservative, isn't it? Is that the state should be as small as possible.
Okay. Next one is, which I came out this morning, and this was quite a big one that he feels he's quite passionate about. He's talking about a flat rate tax on inheritance, but across all proceeds. Now, I don't know what this will look like, because at the moment, you know, you get these tiers of 20 or 40%, I think it is. But, you know, your estate needs to be over £1 million. So I think less than 5% of people actually pay inheritance tax at the moment. And he's talking about this. Everybody pays inheritance tax, but they pay it at a really small rate, like 10%. And that would mean that if you only inherited 50 grand, you pay 5 grand tax on it, if you, and so on and so forth. So I don't know whether this is about, because I haven't seen, there's no detail behind these things, so I don't know whether this is about generating more tax, whether it's about making inheritance tax feel fairer. I don't know. I imagine it's going to generate more tax by pulling everyone in it, but it's massively controversial. We know inheritance tax is the single most hated tax in the UK, and people go out, you know, rioting about it every time someone touches it. So whether he'll be able to do anything with this sort, I don't know, but it's interesting that he's sort of put that one out there, because I've never heard anyone talk about that one.
I think that it's a very clever play, because 10% is not enough for anybody to be like, oh my God, that's so terrible. How dare you do that? You kind of think, oh, you know, it's not the end of the world. Yeah. However, when you look at actually how inheritance works, and you look at the split between like assets and cash, for example, the vast majority of what is transferred is assets.
Of course it is, yeah.
And in a lot of instances, they're treasured family heirlooms and pieces of jewellery and, you know, medals and things like that family are like passing down to the next person. And if all of a sudden
Can I just pause one sec? Are they? You think the vast majority of people's monetary,
no.
it would just be their pension.
Assets in general, but it's not liquid assets. I'm talking about the most extreme scenarios where somebody's only asset or only assets is like a bunch of jewelry and some medals and things like that gets passed down, and as the person receiving that, you have an inheritance tax bill to pay, and you're forced to sell these treasured assets to pay your inheritance tax bill.
These things you're talking about generally have no real value. They have sentimental value.
No, they do.
They're not worth, like, these aren't wealthy people that have Rolexes that are worth 100 grand.
But it doesn't matter.
Talking about your grand's ring that's worth nothing.
It doesn't matter whether it's an expensive Rolex or a cheap Casio watch. The meaning to that, the individual receiving it, is the same, and nobody should be forced to sell an asset to pay an inheritance tax bill. That's how I feel about that. So I'm not against the concept. I'm not against the concept, but I think they need to be really concerned about putting people in financial hardship, because they end up with assets like homes that take way more than 6 months to sell, and they have to pay an inheritance tax bill that they do not have the cash for.
Yeah, but we talked about this on the way here, which is you don't have to pay it.
But you do have to pay it. If you don't pay it, you get interest charged on it.
And you just get charged interest on it. Yes, that's how the rules work. So it's a difficult one, as I said, difficult one to put in place. I don't know how I feel about it. I personally just don't have any give a shit about inheritance tax. I'm just like, dead, you're dead. Just take me. I feel like it's the easiest place to take money from, because who's it hurting? Versus, if the trade off was take much more out of inheritance tax, but give us lots more tax break during our working life, I'd much rather take that all day long. I don't really understand.
Yeah, I agree
but
with
people
that.
are so up. People, I know people listening to this would be like absolutely daggers at my head. Probably based on the stats, 95% of people be like, Simon, you've got no clue. I've waited my whole life for that inheritance. That's mine. We've worked hard for it. It's already been taxed. All those kind of arguments. But we had this conversation about, yeah, it's already been taxed, but so's everything when you go on, so's your money when you go and buy something and charge VAT. Everything's been taxed 3 or 4 times. Like, that's the way the country works. Like, most taxes are a tax on a tax on a tax on a tax, aren't they?
Yeah.
So
Look,
it's just, there's an emotional attachment.
There's
to
an
it. I get
emotional
that.
attachment to.
So it's really difficult. So that's why it probably won't happen because it's difficult.
It's a part of your legacy, isn't it, that you get to leave to your family, and then the government shaft you on that too. So yeah, it's a very difficult one. The next one.
I'm not going to talk about this one in much detail. It's just devolution of spending decisions, but that's just kind of Andy's way. He just wants to, allow cities and towns to make more decisions and have more budgets. I'll be interested to see whether he can push that through and whether that works.
Do you know what? He made a very clever statement, and he said that the North basically have been reliant on the South, and he wants to get the North and the Midlands, like, make them become their own powerhouses so they're not reliant on the South. And I think it's a very clever one, because basically what he's saying is he wants to shift more investment up there.
Correct, yeah.
Away from the South. Now, if he'd just come out with that statement like Keir Starmer was doing, people would be like, oh, why are you moving money away from there? Like, us Southerners don't get anything. But actually, he's framed it so I'm like, yeah, give them as much money as they need so that they can eventually stand on their own 2 feet. So I think from that perspective, he played a very good political game.
Well, let me just add something to that I read this morning, which is absolutely true. Manchester's economy is absolutely flying, and the property markets have totally diverged. This could be really, really difficult for Andy to do at this stage, because London has been in the doldrums for 10 years now. London is not in a good place, and house prices in London versus Manchester in the last 10, genuinely, this is the number. In the last 10 years, house prices in Manchester have gone up 63%. In London, they've gone up 7%.
But there's some very specific pockets in Manchester that are seeing massive rejuvenation, one of which is Salford, and a lot of that was actually, the BBC moving there.
Well, all of it. They've attracted all the big companies, Channel 4, BBC, Media City. Yeah. All of the media's gone up there. Yeah.
But take that out of it. And then obviously there's the football and the football regeneration in that area of the town as well. And then there was a vast amounts of old manufacturing warehouses and things like that were regenerated. So,
but hang on a minute, you can't. That is devolution and attracting investment. You can't take that out of it. What are you talking about?
I totally agree with you. But what I'm saying was,
that is the outcome of a good policy.
Was that Manchester's moment? And is that going to continue? Or is Manchester now just going to be another city that just bumbles along? Like, what I'm saying is, are we taking, like, Manchester in its absolute prime peak hot girl summer moment and saying that applies for forever? And I don't think that's the case. I think it's had its moment and it's now going to become very stable.
Well, there's no sign of that at the moment. It's absolutely flying. Again, it's still flying. It's 13% up last year, I think, their GB. I don't know, it's ridiculous. And Leeds is doing the same. There's lots of the big northern cities that are doing quite well now that are getting the investment. I think his argument is absolutely right. I think it's really challenging to do it. I think it'll be challenging when London's struggling so much on the world stage and in the UK. He's going to go, what I'm going to do is take somebody that's on the floor, like, needs resuscitation. I'm going to knife them in the back. That's basically what he's saying. And I don't know whether he'll get support for that. It's difficult at this time. Final one, this is the big one. And this is the most talked about thing, is that he's talking about abolishing stamp duty in replacement for an annual property tax on all properties, levied at 0.48% on people with their own homes and levied at 0.96% towards landlords. So, of the value of the home. So, and it's not clear yet. Some people are saying this replaces council tax. So, and some people are saying it'd be as well as council. I don't know anybody know what they know, but let's assume replaces council tax. This is just really interesting because there's two policies here in one that are just, one's really good and one's really bad. And I know there's trade-offs in everything. So removing stamp duty, phenomenal idea. Everybody's agreed. Cross-party consensus, everyone in the country, every economist out there, everybody says it completely destroys your economy, stops freedom of movement, stops people downsizing and free up the houses. This is a worse tax than inheritance tax because people physically will cut their nose off to spite their face. People will sit in a £1 million house and say, I won't downsize because I don't want to pay 20 grand even though I've made 900 grand on my house because I don't want to give the government 20 grand that I seemingly get nothing back for. So it gums up the whole property market. It's absolutely terrible. So I have no doubt taking that up would absolutely free up the property market. Everybody would start to move around. They've been sat on their hands for 10, 20 years. It's been getting worse. And I think that would have massive consequences on the economy. Trades, because every time somebody moves, they do up their house, they buy stuff, they buy furniture. It's insane what they spend.
It underpins the job market, all of that type of thing.
So completely in agreement with that. Property tax, don't have an issue at 0.48% on our own house. If it replaces council tax, it's basically the same price, right? I worked out 0.48% works out about the same as the council tax we pay. No issue with that. And obviously it penalises people in high value houses more, so it's more aggressive. So the argument is it'll probably force more people to downsize because they'll have big, what's her name? Edith in her £1 million home that can't really afford it, all of a sudden really can't afford it. So she is forced out that house because suddenly she's got a £5,000 a year bill, or whatever it is, £10,000. Yeah. £5,000 on £1 million. She's got a £2 million house. She's got £10,000 bill a year. Just can't afford it. So that will force her to downsize, which is actually a good thing. I mean, it's not a good thing if you're Edith's daughter or son, because you're probably, don't push old Edith out. We want her there. But actually, for the economy, ruthlessly, it's probably the right thing to free up the house.
But I think having grandparents that are, one of them's 90 and 88. My grandparents would fall into that category. Their house would probably be about £1 million, and they physically, emotionally, everything. They just simply cannot move house.
So they just spend the money, wouldn't they? Because they've got the money, so they just spend the money. So it'd just be a tax on them.
They're lucky because they wouldn't be forced into that situation. But my God, I genuinely think one of them would die going through the process of being forced to move house for financial reasons. I think there's as a societal thing, I think.
It's the same with the farmers. How many farmers have died because of that tax? Things happen. There is trade-offs in everything. That's the thing. You can't make difficult decisions without trade-offs. It's hard. What do? You just can't forever not make a decision, protect everybody, all this. This is because that's why we're where we are after 20 years, and it's what do? You got to make a difficult decision at some point.
The problem is with landlords, though, isn't it? Basically, we're talking about a 1%
of the value of your
tax.
house, and not paid for by the tenant, but paid for by the landlord. So the tenant gets free council tax, saves £200 a month. The landlord suddenly gets charged £200, £400 a month, which is just more than any profit any landlord makes now. So it's a weird. I don't know how they do that.
Ultimately, it's ridiculous because no landlord is just going to suck it up. Because we looked at this, and this
they're
basically
not making that much profit.
This basically wipes out the profit of our entire portfolio
and the rest. Yes.
So we looked at this and we were like, well, we would probably still hold the property anyway because we put the money into property for the long-term capital gains. But not every landlord does that.
I don't think you would.
And I don't. We would try and push the increase onto our tenants, and therefore instead of being a homeowner paying 0.5%, you're now a tenant and you've got to cover the 1% for a landlord. So it's as a tenant, you get shafted.
You can't do that now under the Renters' Rights Act.
But you can.
No, you can't.
Because market rates will go up because there'll be even less landlords in the market.
But it'll be challenged at appeal. It'll get gummed up for 2 years. You can't put the price. You can't put it up until the appeal's been agreed. They won't find the comparables because it'll take time for the market to increase. So when they look at the comparables today, they won't have gone up yet. So they'll side with the tenant. It'll actually be very difficult. They're actually in a very good place to do this and protect the tenant now with Renters' Rights Act. So I don't know, it's an interesting one. I mean, it would just completely, as if there's not enough shortage of rental properties, it would just decimate this final. Well, they keep saying it's the final straw. How many final straws is that?
So, quick recap of what we think Andy is going to do, but then we've also just got a couple that we think Andy definitely won't do. So, just recap is to reverse the national insurance increase on employers back down to 13.8%, cut business rates for hospitality, retail and leisure businesses by 20%, and put a new levy on super warehouses, introduce a flat tax inheritance of 10%, abolish stamp duty and council tax and replace it with a property tax of 0.5% and 1% for landlords, and then devolution of spending decisions. What we're pretty sure Andy Burnham has ruled out is that he won't reintroduce the 50% tax. He's been quite clear by saying that he won't change income tax, national insurance or VAT, so we don't think the 50% rate of income tax is coming back. He's also been quite vocal about committing to the triple lock, which is astonishing because for the first time in years, there's actually some murmurs and support coming for how unsustainable the triple lock is. So it beggars belief that he's come out so soon and said that he's committed to it. And then finally, no changes to income tax thresholds. So it's been rumoured around that he was looking at putting the income tax brackets up. So, the 12,500 that you can earn before you pay tax. However, what he's actually said is that he's committed to looking at this and coming up with a long-term sustainable policy.
Which means kick the can down.
Which just means fuck all. So that won't be changing either.
And obviously the final one he's totally committed to their manifesto promise of not changing VAT, income tax or national insurance.
Now, interestingly, I spent a lot of time this morning on Google, Claude, LinkedIn, lots of various news sites, trying to come up with anything that I could comment on as to how Andy would get the economy stimulated and how he would stimulate growth in the UK. And
There's nothing there.
Genuinely couldn't find a single policy that he has said anything about stimulating the economy. He's talked a lot about, getting the North going and the Midlands going, but he's not actually said anything about how he would do that. Any policies he's introduced, any tax cuts, nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I'm going to summarise here with, because I think you've just segued me into a point I was going to make exactly the same. What you've just described is just Keir Starmer version 2.0.
100%.
Which is, we've just listed a load of things here that are just a list of giveaways. No idea how they're going to be paid for whatsoever.
And don't really do anything.
They don't really move the dial, apart from stamp duty. Stamp duty does.
They don't really cut anybody's taxes.
No.
They just move tax burden
They do
around.
absolutely enough. It's a list of apparent giveaways. No idea how they're going to spend, how they're going to fund it. Frankly, do you know my summary of this? It's a load of bollocks.
Yeah.
This is just bollocks. It's just more bollocks. And do you know what? Here. When he gets in office, he'll do the same as everyone else, which is he'll realise that there's no levers to pull, there's no money to spend, and he's absolutely screwed. And that's my summary for the day. Right.
Oh, there we go.
Let's move on. Yeah, I think I don't know what the answer is, but it's not the next 3 years.
This week's PCG Extra.
Yeah.
So I've got this week's PCG Extra, and it is unashamedly a plug for another business of ours called Spread.finance. And based on my, this scares me to say this, but 20 years experience of working in finance, one task that my team was spending an inordinate amount of time on at month end was doing accruals and prepayments. And for those of you who are not finance accountants out there, then what this essentially means is that we want to move costs and income around so that when we're giving you your management accounts, the month reflects the actual profit for the month. So a classic example of this is a 12-month insurance bill. You get one invoice that goes as a big lumpy number in 1 month, but actually you want to spread the cost over the 12 months that it relates to. So we built a piece of software that connects to Xero called Spread, and it connects to your Xero data, and it will do all of those adjustments automated for you. It looks at your line descriptions, it looks at the attachments, and will work out if something needs spreading and do all of the adjustments in the background. So if you've got a finance team, if you're an accountant listening, or if you're interested in that, then you can book a demo. It'll probably be myself doing the demo. So go to spread.finance, book a demo, or you can sign up to a free trial and connect it to your organisation.
Yeah, it's worth saying that the biggest use case, and most of the customers of it actually use it for deferred revenue, don't they? So they're SaaS companies or memberships or charities.
Event businesses.
Yeah, if your business basically bills somebody up front for a service you're providing either over a period of time or at a date defined in the future, you have a massive manual process involved in Xero in doing that. Spread can completely and utterly automate all of that, can't it?
What I found quite staggering with this is that at PCG, we've been, we serve slightly bigger customers, and we have a really tight process around accruals and prepayments every month. My team sit there, they sift through the P&L, they move things around, they try and put everything right. But because of the manual effort, we always had a threshold, like we wouldn't look at transactions below a certain value and things like that. Numbers. And honestly, when we turned this on some of these organisations, my mind was blown by how much was just like slipping under the radar. And we've literally changed like the P&L by like thousands, tens of thousands in a month just by simply putting spread over the top of it. So it really just makes your management accounts way more accurate. So you know what your true profit really is. And when you know what your true profit is, you can start making decisions. So if you're a business owner, you don't need to be the one implementing this. It's completely plug and play.
Pass it down to your finance manager or whatever and get them to reach out to Claire, spread.finance, and book a demo on there, and we'll show you and see how it might fit in your workflow. Brilliant. So thanks for joining us for another podcast. As always, if you feel like you might have outgrown your account, you'd like to speak to Claire and the team at Profit Cash Growth, nip over to the website. You can book a discovery call there. Obviously, as we said, you can book a demo at spread.finance for the accruals and prepayment software. And as always, please rate, review and subscribe, and do listen back to any of the evergreen episodes, and just share this one with anybody who likes a bit of a rant about politics. We don't very often do a politics episode. And as always, I'll see you next week.